You've been thinking that the secret to your success is hard work, discipline. Yeah, that matters. But one of the keys to your success is really understanding not only your own personality, but the personality types of others. And that will help you become a better leader. And as an entrepreneur, it will help you increase your profits. Today, we have an expert with us. Her name is Natasha Grimes, and usually I would try and say something about them, but I can't even explain what she does. I'm gonna just pass it over to you, Natasha.
Thank you for having me, Jamila. Yes, so it's funny when you say can't explain what she does. Well, in a nutshell, I'm in the people business, teaching people how to understand themselves, understanding their personalities, optimizing their personalities for personal growth, professional development, but then taking it a step further, helping you really to understand the personalities of others so you can have those stronger, more meaningful interpersonal relationships, be more effective. So, in a nutshell, I really just teach people how to understand how you're wired so that you can be the best version of yourself.
See, told you I wasn't gonna do that like that. And so, as we begin today, what is the biggest misconception that you see out here with folks as it relates to them even understanding their own personality?
Yeah, I think one of the things a lot of people do is that they get stuck on a label. I, I,
Mhm.
I would bet we couldn't find one person who hasn't taken some type of personality test or personality assessment, but they get a label and it's like, oh, that's cute. But what I do is really teach you how to understand what your personality is, how you're wired, and then you use that as a locator because you got to know yourself to grow yourself. That's one thing that I always teach. You got to know yourself to grow yourself. You got to locate you to be the best version of you. So a misconception is that I can just take this personality assessment and this is who I am, and that's it. And they put a period there where it should be a comma. And because we should not just say, this is how I am, because none of us are perfect. We have strengths, we have weaknesses, but we need to learn to maximize our strengths, minimize our weaknesses. And I say, go from being that raw version of yourself to the refined version. And when you do that, you're going to show up being the best you. That's your personal brand. We talk about that a lot of times as entrepreneurs, but you want to be that best version of you. But don't just say, well, this is me, take it or leave it. Because no, we shouldn't just stop right there because that means you're no longer growing.
Mm. And I really leaned into this. I feel like it's actually a biblical principle, a God principle for us to grow and develop, for us to take that introspection and really move forward. Like we go from glory to glory. He says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, renewing, meaning that it's going to continuously happen. And so you really hit on something there for myself and the listeners. And when you think about really getting to the deep understanding of you, what are the things that kind of hold people back? And I ask you that because I am at a place where I feel like people don't like to take ownership of who they really are. Like it
Mm.
scares them to look within.
Yeah, it is scary because when we really start to look at ourselves, we know that we're not as great all the time as we think we are. I used to say, well, if people just listen and do what I tell them to do, they'll be fine. Like, because in my mind, I thought it was right? That's part of my personality is that just, I'm so goal oriented, so focused. And if you don't realize how you are showing up in the world, then you don't understand the why behind why people may or may not be as receptive to you as you think they should. Romans 12:18 says, as far as it depends on you to live at peace with all men. That means you are the same person. You are the common denominator in every relationship. So it can't always be the other person. So if everywhere you go, there is this certain reaction or there is this certain feeling, then you really have to then to start looking at, well, maybe it is me because it can't always be the other person. And so for me, that was one of the things that really helped me early on. I've been doing this, it was trained 16 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. I've been teaching this for 16 years. And really, it has been, I would say, one of the single most impactful pieces of information outside of the Word of God that has helped me
Mhm.
with my personal growth and development is truly, truly understanding how I'm wired, but then truly understanding how to watch the visible cues that people give us all the time about who they are. And then I can pivot my interactions with them because I can't change anyone else. I can only change me. So that's been really, really key for me to not just look at what other people should be doing. I have to look at me. God is going to hold me accountable for how I'm treating others. If I'm showing kindness, if I'm showing love, sometimes we don't know why we're not able to do things as easily as some others. Yeah, there are spiritual gifts that some people have, but there are also some people who are naturally wired to be more sensitive and empathetic. So it's really important to know who you are.
And once we get to a place where we know who we are, what are some of the life benefits that you see with people?
Wow. I'll just speak for myself. It has
Mhm.
been game changing. I'll start with my first relationship that's the closest to me right now is with my husband.
Mhm.
We are polar opposites. We've been together to be 30 years married in March. It'll be 36 years together next year. And I can tell you that anyone who knows us and have known us since back in high school when we met, they'll tell you we're as different as night and day. We butted heads so much in the beginning. And this understanding of who I am and who he is has been game changing. It was game changing for me when I was a classroom teacher. I taught for over 10 years. And it was actually when I was teaching that I got this understanding and this training. And I then began to engage differently with my students, and I would see the results because I was no longer having this one size fits all method of
Mhm.
how I interacted with them. I no longer thought that everything I said was right because I'm the teacher. You just do what I say, and back old school teaching, right? But I really then began to understand who my students are. Let me reach them and teach them based on who they are. Game changing. And then also in the business world, when I left teaching, got into sales and really understanding my clients, my business, the businesses that I partner with, and do a lot of client services, partner relationships. Every client is different, meaning the personalities of the people that I'm engaging with. So I need to know which client do I need to come with the spreadsheets, the graphs, all the things. And then which are the ones that want just conversation? Which are the ones that want a lot of that fluff in my email? Which ones, no, straight to the point. So when you can understand yourself and what your natural strengths are, but also that other person, you can tailor your approach to be more effective, even in your business.
No, you are spot on. I think about this in how I teach entrepreneurs this in some of the programming, whether it's Start Your Business from Scratch or the Zero to Profit Accelerator program, where if you don't know them and you don't know which personality you're speaking to, you're not going to speak the right language to draw them into you, because there are some people who are so detail oriented. And if you are a person where you're going to get annoyed by that fourth question, you're going to be like, but you have to understand that this is their personality. This is the way that they're wired. And so you have to deal with them accordingly. And so I hope all of our entrepreneurs are leaning in here, because this is not only about just like leading us, it's also about how we will be able to serve more people, right? Like, we didn't get into entrepreneurship. Yes, we're going to make money because we're in God's kingdom and He's called us to make money, but we're really about that service and transformation. And so I just really love how you kind of broke that down so that everyone could lean in and kind of gather that here. And so if we take ourselves and what we learn about others, how does that impact our overall well-being?
It makes it so much easier. I just can't even tell you, even as if you're an entrepreneur, if you understand the why behind the behavior, you're a lot more forgiving. You're a lot more freer to really engage with that person. Like, there are some clients who might kind of rub you the wrong way. But if you really understand they aren't doing anything to try to personally hurt you or be, mean or anything like that. I can't tell you how many times I've been called mean in my life. I'm like, me? What? But it's because I was so direct. But I didn't understand that when I take my directness to the extreme, how that shows up. So even if you have a customer or a client who comes across a certain way, if you truly watch their behaviors and understand their personality, you will then be a lot more able to let things kind of roll off that otherwise might annoy you. Or if there's someone who requires a lot more details, and you're like, if I have to send them another spreadsheet, or if I need to send them another whatever to outline this proposal, it's because that's what they need. And then you then understand that it may not be something I need, but it's what they need. And if I'm going to tailor my business and try to be that customer centered business owner, then hey, I'm going to do what I need to do. And to me, it makes it easier. It makes it easier because I know me and I know where I need to make the adjustments. I know that there are some people that I can be just as direct. Well, they can, I can be direct with them because that's how they are. That's what they appreciate. But then there are others I need to pull back. So it's allowed me, honestly, to have so much more success in what I do. Every career that I've had, even in the business that I'm doing now, it's tailoring it to people because I am in the people relationship business. Like that's who I am. It's, learning, development, anything educating, right? But if you are even in sales or if you're in counseling or whatever that thing is that you're doing, you need to understand who you are, how you show up, but then the other person. But you then don't expect them to change because they may not. It's a good chance they won't, but I can adjust. I'm not changing me. I'm not telling anyone to be anything other than who they are, but I can tailor and I can adjust and I can pivot a lot more easily when I'm picking up on those visible cues about who that person is.
Yeah, that's really good. And I think about how different would life be if you didn't get this training, right? And so if you think about if we could draw a line on how I'm going to start with leaders and then we'll go to entrepreneurs. So with leaders, if you think about the leaders who are not willing to engage in this training and what you see from them versus the leaders who really like go into it and then the shifts that you see with them. Can you talk to me about those differences?
Yeah. So leaders who don't lean into this, they're not going to be the best leaders that they could be because you're leading from only one dimension, and that is the dimension of who you are, not recognizing and understanding that everybody who shows up in that meeting with you, who's on your team, they are not necessarily wired like you. So if you have, it's kind of like when I was a teacher, if I had that one size fits all approach to 25, 30 students, then I'm going to reach some of them more effectively than others. But gosh, when I began to really tailor and almost customize how I approach them, it was so much more impactful because I'm meeting them where they are. So if you're a leader, it's not just about you, because hopefully if you're a leader, it's about the people you're serving. It's the people you're influencing. It's the people who are on your team. You can't just make it where everybody has to cater to what your personality is. Yes, I would love that, honestly, when I was a people leader, a manager, whatever your title is, whatever you want to call it, or if you're a business owner, that, I could just show it up and not have to, do all of the little warm, fuzzy stuff, because I don't need warm, fuzzy stuff. Just boom, let's go. But I knew I had people on my team who needed the warm, the fuzzy, the small talk. How was your morning? How was, this weekend? All the things. How are your kids? Not that I didn't care, but because some of us are wired to be so focused, to be so driven, to be so goal oriented, we sometimes lose people. And oftentimes people who are in leadership roles, they are wired like that. And so you have to be careful not to leave and lose those who are not like you.
That's so good. That is so good. And don't leave those that are not like you. Y'all wrote that one
No.
down. I hope they wrote that one down. So now let's flip this over to entrepreneurs. What like the difference between what you're seeing, those that are leaning and those that do not?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So I'm working right now with it within the real estate industry of doing some learning and development education there. And when you're a real estate agent, you really are an entrepreneur. Sometimes your broker might give you some leads, but sometimes, a lot of times they're not. You're out here trying to find the business, but you need to understand who you are and why is it that there are some of your colleagues or some of the people on that team who seem to be having more success than you. Well, it's because some of them are wired to be more driven, to be more of a go-getter versus you being more non-confrontational, laid back. You'd much rather not have to go to that networking event, right? So if you're an entrepreneur, and I don't get into introvert, extrovert, I get into really understanding the four basic personality temperaments. But if you are wired in such a way that you'd much rather not do that, well, then you still network, but it may look differently. You have to tailor your approach for what's going to be sustainable for you over time. And I teach people about what I call hacking themselves, meaning you don't have to be a 10 at being goal-oriented, direct, being very much that hunter type of sales or entrepreneurial person, but you might have to go from a 0 to a 2 or 3. You might need to look at, well, what are some of those things? So if I'm naturally not someone who engages the crowd, or I'm naturally not good on stage, well, maybe you shouldn't do that event where it's 1,000 people. Maybe you're going to be more influential or impactful one-on-one or in small groups. So you really have to know yourself to even know how you're going to leverage your strengths. And it's something I call using your DNA, your distinct natural abilities. Not that we can't acquire other skills, but I try to lean more heavily in what are my distinct natural abilities that I'm already wired with, so I don't have to hack myself as much. Now, I really have to hack myself. I'll put myself out there with networking events where it's not informational or educational. If it's just social, that's more of a, I don't really want to do that. Like, I don't want to talk to people I don't know. I'm so purposeful. But I understand as an entrepreneur, I have to get out of my comfort zone of always being in this learning mode because I want to learn to go do, learn to do. Like, everything can't be about conquering the next goal. But if you don't know that about yourself, I know that about me. I know that. So if you don't know these things and you're not understanding fully why you may not be having the success as you think you should, it's because you're trying to operate outside of your distinct natural abilities and not sometimes allowing yourself to be hacked to go from that 0 to a 2 or 3 in those areas where you're not as strong.
Listen, you said so much there with the hacking, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been hacking myself more than usual because this is my DNA right here. And wow, but this is why we need to lean into the trainings that you provide.
Yeah.
One thing that you said, you talked about the 4 temperaments. What are those 4 temperaments? Because I know the audience is like,
I opened up a can of worms. See, I will give them a little bit, but that's where I want them to contact me. We'll talk about it, right? I'll just give the very generic. I won't get into all the details because literally it's too much. But there is a powerful choleric, there is a popular sanguine, there is a peaceful phlegmatic, and there is a perfect melancholy. That was a mouthful. There's a lot of terms. Just think that powerful person is the person who's goal-oriented, task-driven, not as relational. They are oftentimes the one that's going to take charge, excel in emergencies. So that's one personality type. And it's very visible. Then you have someone else who shows up and they are like bright sunshine because they are the life of the party. They are talkative. They never met a stranger. That's another personality. That's your popular sanguine. Those two are the easiest to spot. And I'm, again, showing you right now visible cues. This is why I use what's called a no test needed method, because you don't have time to give out personality assessments. I, on the spot, can picture in my mind who this person is based on these visible cues that I'm telling you. Then there is a perfect melancholy. That person is typically going to be more sensitive. They're going to be more soft-spoken. They prefer to be alone. A lot of times they're more empathetic, but they're also very detail-oriented. They need structure. They like their closets a certain way. They like their desk a certain way. They don't want you to touch their stuff, right? So that's the third. And then the fourth is your peaceful phlegmatic. They're the hardest to spot because they're just incognito. They're non-confrontational. They're in the cut. They're just chill. They're whatever's comfortable. You're going to see them wearing comfortable clothes. And so basically any of the personality assessments that you've ever taken are based out of the 4 basic temperaments. That's why I love it, because it's so easy to remember, and I can spot it. And so when I started learning about this, I had done all the others, and I'm not going to name them to put them down. They're good. It just didn't work for me because of my personality. I don't have time for all that. I need to know, how can I use this immediately? And I love that it's so applicable. It's so practical. But yeah, so I just really can see almost everybody that I'm talking with, where they are. And it's not to label them. It's so I can best interact and engage with them. And yes, we typically have a combination. I won't get into the natural combinations and all the things. That's, it's a lot when you start doing that. But just look for those glaring visible cues. They're easy. Just even how someone shows up in the room. Someone who is that powerful caller, they show up with presence. They show up, and sometimes they might even feel intimidating to you because of how strong they come across. But yeah, I could go on a long time when we start really getting into it. Don't get me started. You started something.
You started. I just picked up on it.
Because it just rolls out like it's such a part of my language. Honestly, even if you were in my house, my husband, my 2 kids, I've been talking about this for 16 years. It's part of our common language. Like, we literally will describe someone that we met. Yeah, so-and-so, they're choleric, da, da, da. And I immediately know. My kids, they immediately know. Anyone that I've taught this to, and if I really did a good job, we speak that language. It's like having our own language, because we understand, and I can describe whoever it is that I'm talking about or engaging with based on that person's personality. I can say that term, and we automatically can see who it is.
No, that's good. That's good. I think one of the things I want to lean into, because as you were saying that, I'm like a little bit of this, a little bit of that, a little bit of that. Like, how is it a thing for people to be hybrid?
You typically have a natural combination of two. And I can't get into all this, but there are natural combinations, and then there are combinations that really don't match. And we call that masking. Sometimes because of life, because of trauma, people are no longer showing up as who they authentically are and how they're naturally wired, but they, as a result of whatever in life. And, I'll use this example. If there's a kid who is very playful and they're talkative and they're always, kind of think about like a Steve Harvey or Kev on stage, like any of those folks. If they had been constantly told, sit down, be quiet, sit down, be quiet, sit down, be quiet, when they grow up to be an adult, even though that's who they are naturally, they don't show up like that anymore. They show up a lot more subdued, and you'll think that that's their natural personality. But when we start really talking and digging deeper, it's a mask. It's a mask that they were forced to wear because they couldn't show up in their natural DNA. They couldn't show up in their natural state. So I had to take them all the way back to childhood, take away those rules, take away all of the adulting, the restraints. Who is that person? I've always been me, right? I've been that one. If I'm going to play school when I was little, I'm going to be the teacher. I'm going to be in charge. Like that, that's at the core who I am. But if I were told to, like, you need to tone it down, or you shouldn't be this direct and what, then I probably would not show up as my natural self right now. So it's a combination typically that you're going to have that's a natural combination, but then there are some that aren't, and that's when you're probably masking. It's a counterfeit version of you showing up.
Mm-hmm. Listen, I think we might could end the recording there. Go, and it's so like, one of my friends, he says this, he's like, God's timing is his kindness, right? And the timing of this and the timing of Dr. Anita's book, The Garden from Within.
Yes, I've started that.
And it goes back to that seed and how the seed right now then develops into a mask, then that develops into a personality trait. And then you don't really live the life that you were supposed to be living, the natural life you were designed to live. You're living the mask life.
Yes.
Woo!
Yes. And you're not thriving when you live that way. When you're living based on your DNA, your distinct natural abilities, that's when you're going to thrive. I can thrive when you tell me, go on stage and you talk about stuff that you're passionate about, let me take charge. But if you tell me that I have to, like, I have a hard time even taking naps, like to rest. That's not who I am, right? But if you're a person and you don't know these things about yourself, you don't understand the why. You don't understand why is it that certain things no longer feel normal for you. It's because you are masking. It's because you are not showing up authentically. And it's a buzzword now for people to say, I'm going to be my authentic self. Well, do you even know what that means? Because I would beg to say a lot of you are saying that. Who is the authentic you? Tell me about her or him. Yeah.
Listen, people need to be going ahead and booking you for their organizations. Okay, because if you are like this impacts your bottom line. Yeah. When you have a whole bunch of masked people around, trying their best to live in the mask and not even aware that they need to go and find that DNA, right? And so we could never, right, pay you enough for this information. And I just hope that the seeds are falling on good ground, because what you're doing is you're disrupting like the mask. You're disrupting the facade, right? And as kingdom people, we are called to live in spirit and in truth.
Yeah. Yes.
And so if you are living in a mask,
yeah,
where's your truth?
Yes, that's good. Yeah.
Where is your truth? So then you are not even living, in a sense.
Yes. Yeah. You're wired for your assignment. And I can't do my assignment well if I don't even know what that wiring is. Like sometimes we don't recognize that there's a reason that I'm this way. I used to want to be, not as serious and not as driven. And then God really showed me, no, this is who you are. And this is what I need from you for your assignment. And it took me a long time to get there, because to some degree, I wanted to be that fun loving, let's just go. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's just not me. And I didn't get really that clear understanding of that's not ever going to be me. Can I be more lighthearted? Can I sometimes not take myself so seriously? Yes. That's me going from the raw version to the refined. The refined means, Tasha, you don't always have to be on 10 at what your personality type is. But that doesn't mean that I have to show up and be someone else or like someone else to have effectiveness, to be effective in what I do. Because what I do, and I think about my work, I think about my family dynamics with my parents, I'm the youngest of 3, but I've been the one oftentimes where I've had to come in when there are emergencies, when there has been sickness, when there has been, and I'm like, wow, what if I weren't this way? What if I weren't wired like this? What would have happened to my parents? What would have happened in this situation, that situation, when naturally I showed up being me and it was exactly what was needed?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so good. And what do you say to the people who have made some attempts to live in their DNA, but their environment beat it out of them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think, and my husband, he's fine with me sharing this because he shares a story. He's one of those people. He is that popular sanguine who take everything away. All he wants to do is have fun and play and just, make people laugh. But that was literally almost beat out of him, because old school was, you need to sit down and be quiet. You shouldn't do this. In school, you're supposed to be a certain way. He literally got held back in first grade because they said he wasn't socially ready enough. And now he's, doing amazing things. There was nothing ever wrong with him. It was just that he didn't show up the way people thought that he should show up. So you have to begin to start peeling back the layers. You may have to put some boundaries in place for those people who aren't serving you well, who aren't allowing you to be you. But it really takes time for you to even know, how did I get here? He's now, I won't tell his age, but he's 50 plus. And he's like, I'm just now rediscovering who I really am, because corporate America has beaten certain things out of us. There are certain expectations of how you're supposed to show up. So even in school, there were expectations. And I'm not saying that you should just be able to run wild, but I remember when I had students who had my husband's personality, And it's because I knew that I allowed them to be freer. I allowed them to just, okay, go ahead. Tell what's your joke? Okay, all right, let's go ahead and have some fun because I knew that's who they are and what they needed. So if you're that person now, you really have to take yourself all the way back, really, to childhood. Who was I then before all of these rules and all of these requirements and all of these things, and really try to get back to that. But you also have to make sure that there aren't people around you who's forcing you to operate in a way that you're not. And even, in relationships, you have to be mindful, because I really wanted him to be a certain way until I realized he ain't ever gonna be that. He's always gonna be childlike. He's always gonna be talking, because we would go something like, why are you? We would drive separately to church because he wanted to socialize afterwards, and I wanted to go home. I'm like, look, I'm here. Let me get the word. You can stay and talk as long as you want. No, for real. Oh yeah, that was a couple for at least 2 or 3 years. I mean, not recently, but there were years where literally I'm like, no, you need to drive. But that was a need for him, and I didn't understand it. It's now that I'm understanding, even with people who had that peaceful, phlegmatic personality, I thought they were lazy. I'm like, you just need to get some oomph to you. Well, that's because that's how I am. And I thought everybody was supposed to show up that way. So you have to make sure there are people celebrating you for being you and who you naturally are. And I've learned to celebrate those people who are different from me versus tolerating them. I used to tolerate people because I felt like y'all just need to get it together. And I then learned it's not that I'm tolerating. I need to celebrate them. They're not wrong. They're just different from me.
And so, what would you say to the person who's scared to take that next step to really figure out themselves in this way? Like, I sense that there are a number of people who are like, "Ooh, I need to do this." Ooh, ooh, ooh. But then they talk themselves out of it, or they have to get to that breaking point in order for them to do something to really know and understand themselves, or even understand the people. Because one of the things that I think we fail to realize is that we are all leaders, because we all have the ability to have some measure of impact and influence, right? Whether it is in our household, whether it is on our jobs, whether it is in our business, in our churches, or wherever it is, we're all some sort of leaders. And so if we don't figure out this piece right and take this next step, we never optimize or get to that point of leadership that we're supposed to get to. And then you have to answer to God, because he has an assignment for us, an assignment the way in which he wants it done.
Yeah. You really have to ask yourself, am I really going to stay here and do it my way, or am I going to do what I know God has called me to be, and be that person? And then it's almost like a slap in God's face to say, like, God, you don't know what you're doing if you made me this way and I don't like it. God knew what he was doing when he wired you to be who he is and put you in that family and all the things. So I think it's the self-realization, and that's where it starts, which is happening right now, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Some people have taken personality assessments and it was like, oh, it was cute, and they never used it as a tool. And it's probably because I am an educator, I am a teacher, I always wanted to dig deeper. And so I was like, okay, well, there's more to that, because this was really pretty accurate. I mean, it was, at that time, I think it was like, I don't know, something with like animals or whatever, but it was still the basic 4 temperaments, right? So when you really start having that self-realization, then that's when you can embrace the self-awareness. And we talk about emotional intelligence, and then you can have that self-management. And I've always said, I love emotional intelligence, but I can't manage what I'm not aware of. And this tool and what I teach helps you be aware of who you are. Now I can manage me better because I know who I am. It's harder to do that when you don't understand the why behind the behavior. I understand the why behind my wiring. I understand that. But also, I want to make sure what I'm doing, it pleases God. And it's not saying, God, you made a mistake when you made me who I am and how I am. So if you're that person who wants to truly please God, and you're after the things of God that he has for you, you're going to get that by being you. You're not going to get that by being someone other than who you are. And I'm not saying it to, again, put a period there. It's saying it with the understanding there are measures that I'm trying, almost like benchmarking, like, okay, I'm good now. I'm like, okay, I'm no longer as brash and bossy. And God's like, okay, but you still need to work on this. So I always see this as a way for me to continue to grow and be better. I've never arrived. I'm not going to arrive, because the moment I think I've gotten one area down pat, like, I used to have an itinerary to go on vacation. And my husband was like, that's real stressful. But because he was a free spirit. So it's not that I was wrong. It's not that he was wrong. But now I've learned that it doesn't have to be my way. So it's so many ways that it allows you to grow and truly be that best version of yourself that we keep talking about. We keep saying we want to be the best version of me and all the things. Well, you got to first locate. You always kind of use the analogy. One of the analogies I use when I teach this is, if you're trying to go somewhere and you're using GPS is always going to ask you your starting point. So we're not going to get to that destination. We're not going to arrive to certain points. And, even with GPS, that doesn't mean that's your final destination, but that's my next stop. Well, I need to start somewhere. And so I always look at this as my starting point for me to grow, to be that best me.
I love it. I love it. I love it. We could, us, we could probably talk about this all day. But any final thought on how leveraging personalities really is the one of the keys to leading better and increasing your profits as a business owner?
Yeah, I mean, you got to know you to grow you. And it is one of those things that the moment you truly understand who you are and how you're showing up, then you can make moves based on that. Some of us are trying to make moves because we're looking at everybody on IG, and you don't even realize, well, you're nothing like that person. That looks good, and that's good for them. Yes, you can glean certain things from them, but you may not be that person that's going to go live every night, because you don't even have that much to say. Like, you need a script because that's how you are. But we have to recognize that understanding you is going to allow your DNA to show up, your distinct natural abilities, that you are what people are after. Your audience, your people, they're going to be attracted to you, your personal brand, all of those things. It's about you. I'm not for everybody. I literally have a shirt that says, I'm not for everyone, because I know that everybody's not going to want to be attracted or attached, or I'm not magnetic for certain people. But you've got to show up being you, so that the people that you are called to serve, that you're assigned to, they're going to be attracted to you, that natural version of you that's growing and evolving and refining, but it's you.
I love it. We thank you so much. For those of you all who know that naturally you're supposed to be an entrepreneur and you want to start your business from scratch, you want to unleash that God idea, or on this flip side, you want to actually protect your God idea, your programs, and all those different things from a legal perspective, make sure that you connect with I Am and More. I am here not only to help you unleash your God idea, but to protect your God idea. And y'all, that God idea is hot off the presses, and I already protected it. So I know, don't try no stuff. But I love you. It's been another great episode. We thank you, Natasha, for coming on. And as always, as you are on the journey to more, remember to look within to be more, so that you can have more and so that you can do more. Take care, everyone.